for me.
First thing I'm going to do is take off my jacket. Is that all right? One of the most exciting things about this campaign has been the chance I've had to meet and talk with so many of you and to answer your questions. That's what tonight is all about.
Election Eve. The best America is yet to come. Mike Dukakis, face-to-face with the voters.
The only thing I would like to ask Michael Dukakis is I wish, actually it's not even so much as asking him, I just wish he'd just show a little bit more of his personality, because I do think he's a good man and he's a much better man for the job than George Bush.
And I just want to know why Dukakis really doesn't let his emotions show through. He doesn't seem to want anybody to know exactly who he is.
When you were asked that question in the debate about your wife being raped and murdered, why was your answer so cold?
Governor, if Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered...
Nothing is more precious to me in this world than Kitty and our children. And we felt the pain of crime in our family. My dad was bound and gagged and beaten by somebody who was looking for drugs in his office where he was a doctor. He was 77 years of age at the time. My only brother was killed by a hit-and-run driver who we've always assumed was drunk or on drugs. So we know what it's like to be victimized. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I've worked so hard in my state, to fight crime, to make neighborhoods safe, to help people, to support the victims of crime, and to reach out to them with compassion and sensitivity. But I guess I'd probably like to have an opportunity to answer that question again, and maybe I don't wear my heart on my sleeve, but my passion is in my service to the public. That's why I've been in public service as long as I have. That's where I show my caring as well, obviously, as my love and compassion for my family that is just so very, very special to me. And I hope in some ways I've been able to express that emotion better over the course of the past few weeks, but I want you to know that Mike Dukakis is somebody who cares very, very deeply about his family, about his neighbors, about his fellow citizens. And that's why I'm running for the presidency.
I'd like to know why it takes him so long to respond to the lies that come out of Bush's speeches.
What we hear, we find devastating. That this business of letting go out of the prison people who have committed crimes, that they're entitled to have a vacation.
I don't know of anything that has made me angrier in this campaign than Mr. Bush's use of the Willie Horton tragedy for political purposes. It was a terrible tragedy. I accepted responsibility for it, and I stopped the program. But Mr. Bush knows that when President Reagan was governor of California, he had a furlough program, as do most of the states in this country. That under his governorship, that furlough program ended in tragedy not once but twice, the murder of a police officer and of a school teacher by people out on furlough. And Mr. Bush also knows that right now, in his administration, in the federal prison system, there is a furlough program. Murderers are being furloughed, drug pushers and drug dealers are being furloughed, and last year there was a terrible tragedy where a federal inmate on furlough from a federal correctional facility raped and stabbed and murdered a pregnant young mother, in a terrible, terrible tragedy. But I would never use that particular tragedy for the purpose of accusing Mr. Reagan of being soft on crime. And maybe that's the difference between George Bush and me. My state has one of the best records of fighting crime and law enforcement in the country, and he knows it. We've cut crime by more than any other industrial state in America. We've got the lowest murder rate of any industrial state in America. I've personally led that effort. And that's the kind of leadership I want to bring to the White House.
I hate to pick up the newspaper, turn on the radio, people are getting killed, children are getting killed.
Please be a little bit tougher on the criminals in the country.
I think we need a little more boot in the butt. Just take your pick, be it drugs, law enforcement, all of that. We just need a little more teeth in the system, I think.
Every house in my neighborhood, a very nice neighborhood, has been robbed. There are drugs being sold on every one of the street corners in our neighborhood. Every bar, every candy store is selling drugs. Why? Why is this being allowed? Why doesn't someone do something extraordinary?
You know, you can talk and talk and talk about crime. Politicians love to do that. The question is, which one of us, George Bush or Mike Dukakis, has done something about it? I think it's fair to say that every time George Bush has been given an assignment to fight crime or law enforcement, he's failed. He led, or was supposed to be leading, the war against drugs. There's 3 times as much cocaine coming into this country today as there was in 1981. As a matter of fact, cocaine is about the only thing you can buy these days that's cheaper than it was in 1981. This poison is pouring into our neighborhoods. It's destroying our kids. It's destroying our communities. The kind of fight I've led in my own state is the kind of fight I want to lead as your president.
Okay, my question is about the environment. And we're destroying 27 million acres of forests a year. And these are the forests that recycle carbon dioxide and help prevent the greenhouse effect.
Right.
What kinds of steps will you take to reverse these kinds of crises so that our children, my generation, will not inherit a biologically dead planet?
So what are we going to do about it? I like Mike Dukakis, President of the United States. And that's the first.
Well, I think you know the history of the past 8 years. An administration that came to office determined to virtually destroy the Environmental Protection Agency. And Mr. Bush was part of that. He discovered Boston Harbor about 4 months ago, you know? And what he isn't telling you and the American people is that we've been cleaning up Boston Harbor for the past 4 years. It was polluted for 100 years. In 1984, we passed landmark legislation to clean it up. It's the biggest water cleanup project in the country. And it cost us upwards of $4, $5, $6 billion. We're doing it. No thanks to Mr. Bush and his friends who supported the veto of the Clean Water Act, not once but twice, an end to the federal grant program, and it's part of a very, very sorry history of environmental neglect that we've had over the course of the past 8 years. Let me say one other thing. The greenhouse effect, as all of you know, is not just a problem for the United States, is it? It's a worldwide problem. And in addition to international summits on arms control, I hope we can begin immediately after the 20th of January to plan for international environmental summits which go to work on greenhouse effect. I know we have some teachers in the audience, right? I'm very concerned about the future of teaching. So should all of you. So especially, I hope, will young people in this country. Half of our public school teachers are going to retire in the next 10 years. And I'm not meeting a lot of young people who are thinking seriously about a career in teaching. Make teaching a valued and honored profession again and encourage young people to go into it and take it seriously. Very important.
I'd like to ask, if you were elected president, how, during the next 4 years, you would like to see the United States relationship with the Soviet Union?
I'd really like to know if you're going to be tough with Mr. Gorbachev, but friendly with him, so we can continue this progress we've made so far.
I want to know what you're going to do with the military.
I would like to know if a balance can be made between social issues and defense spending in a way that defense will be maintained while social issues such as education and housing can be increased.
And Gene, that's the point, isn't it? We're going to have a president and a vice president who can strike a balance. And you can bet your bottom dollar that with Mike Dukakis and Lloyd Bentsen as president and vice president of the United States, we're going to have a strong national defense, a strong and effective and credible nuclear deterrent, and strong conventional forces that are well supported and well maintained. Our fighting men and women deserve no less than that. But we also have to understand that if we're going to be militarily strong, we've got to be economically strong. And the two go hand in hand. Look at what's happening in the Soviet Union right now. Yeah, they're militarily strong and they're collapsing economically. And it's hurting them badly. As an international power, it's hurting them as a nation. It's hurting their people. Mr. Gorbachev goes out to Siberia and all he hears from the people out there is, why are the stores empty? We can never let that happen to us. That's why we're going to be striking the right balance with a strong military, but with a nation that's strong economically. We're going to be working with the Congress to bring down that deficit while we invest in the future, invest in our children, invest in the kind of future that we want for ourselves and our families. But you can bet your life that if Mike Dukakis and Lloyd Bentsen are in the White House beginning in January of 1989, this nation will be defended, and defended well.
Most important, I guess, for us right now, you know, we land smack dab in the middle of America, and obviously costs of things, housing, you know, child care is very important to us. I want to make sure that there's a future. I want to make sure that there's retirement schools for, you know, for my child. That things are, you know, 20 years down the road, there's going to be a world that's worth living in for my child.
Kathleen, I kept looking at your baby and thinking about the grandchild that Kitty and I are expecting in January. Our son John and our daughter-in-law Lisa will be having a child in January. It's our first grandchild, and I have very much the same emotions you do. I want the future of this country to be a very bright one, a very good one for your child and for our grandchild and for children like them all over the country. And I understand the concern you have for child care. It's going to be very important, particularly because you and your husband are going to be working, and you've got a responsibility to that child, and I never want you to have to make a choice between the job you need and the child you love. I've had great success in my own state as governor in bringing together a lot of people and beginning to create opportunities for good child care and quality child care and affordable child care. And we're going to have to involve everybody. You know, this isn't a job that government by itself can do. Yes, we've got to be involved. I will be involved. But employers have got to be involved. Labor unions have got to be involved. Churches, synagogues, nonprofit organizations, lots of people who can work with us to make those child care opportunities available to you and to your husband. I hope you'll work with us, because I'm going to be asking citizens all over this country to work with us, to plan with us, to build with us. That's the way we're going to build the kind of future you talked about. That's the way we're going to build a future in which your child and our grandchild can grow up healthy, strong, and in a position to make a real contribution to their country someday soon.
Now, Mr. Bush tells us that he wants the government to make one of the most personal choices a woman can make. And last week, Dan Quayle told a 12-year-old girl that even if she were raped by her father and became pregnant, the government has a right to force her to bear that child. But I believe a choice that personal must be made by the woman in the exercise of her own conscience and religious beliefs.
Well, I'd like to know what their plans are for senior citizens.
Well, I'd like to ask him how stable the Social Security program is, because I retired last year on a company pension and integrated with Social Security, and I want to know if it's stable and if I have anything to worry about in years to come.
Hey, Mike, what are you going to do for me when I retire?
Herman, we're going to make sure that the Social Security system in this country is strong and solvent, and that you and people like you can depend on that Social Security check. You know, I hear all the time about how we're going to balance the budget by cutting entitlements. That's a fancy word for saying that we're going to cut Social Security. 2/3 of the people who receive Social Security checks in this country depend on that Social Security check entirely for a living. How can we deny them a cost of living increase? How can we talk seriously about cutting Social Security as a means for balancing the budget? Now, George Bush did that once. Flew all the way across the country to break a tie in the Senate and cut the cost of living for Social Security recipients. We can never permit that to happen again. And that's as good a reason as any I know to vote for Mike Dukakis and Lloyd Bentsen. We believe in Social Security. It's a contract between generations. It is not, as Mr. Bush once said, largely a welfare program. It's something you've earned and paid into. It's one of the best things that's ever happened to this country. We're going to preserve it. We're going to strengthen it. We're going to make sure that that Social Security fund is solvent so that you can depend on it for your retirement.
America that's in charge of its own future, that has control of its own destiny. Not a country that is selling off its land and its assets piece by piece to foreign interests. Because we're not going to settle for an America that's second best or fifth best or seventh best. We want to build the best America. And if you want to know what's at stake in this election, take a good hard look at the only new idea George Bush has had since this campaign began. A new $40 billion 5-year capital gains giveaway for the very rich. Now, who's going to pay for that tax break? Look beside you, look behind you, look in the mirror and ask yourself, is George Bush on your side? I want to give every American a chance to build a better life.
Matters to me most is getting jobs. The younger people coming up, the young guy starting out today, he has no future because it's like there's nowhere for him to go. If he's not a high school, if he's not a college graduate, the average working kid, there's no industries for him.
People are starving in Louisiana. People are losing their homes. They're 6 months late on their bills. People can't buy homes because they don't have any jobs, they don't have any money. And just exactly what does he plan to do about this?
People starving in this country? Their houses being foreclosed on because there are no jobs down there? Isn't the responsibility of the next president of the United States to go to work and invest with the people of Louisiana, bring business and labor and the educational community together?
You go to farm meetings, and who you see? A bunch of old guys like me, maybe 1 or 2 boys. And I said, that's bad.
He loves the farm, and he's good. But he says, Grandpa, I can't see where there's going to be any money on the farm for me a few days down the road, and I got to look for something that I have more income.
Governor Dukakis, are you going to help the farmers out, or are you going to just goof around like Reagan's been doing and say you're helping them and you don't?
Republicans think that the fewer farmers we have, the better, that the bigger the farmers, the better. I don't believe that. I think the family farm is a very, very precious institution in this country. And I know that working with our family farmers, we can get them a fair price for their crops and build a strong future for them and their children and grandchildren. There's a love of the land and a love of farming among these farm families, which is very, very precious. And I hate to think that man's grandchild is going to have to leave the farm even though he wants to farm. We can do better.
Well, in 4 years, I'll be graduating, and I'd really like to know just what my chances are of finding a decent technical job after I graduate.
I'm going to have to work full-time as a waitress at night and try to go to school during the day. It's impossible. It's virtually impossible to do that.
These are good, solid Americans who are very, very concerned about the future. That young woman who's going to have to waitress full-time, try to go to school at the same time, isn't there something we can do? Of course there is. Supposing we said to her, look, you take out a college loan, and once you graduate and begin to earn, then you can pay it back through income withholding over a period of time. Wouldn't that make sense? It's not going to be a burden on the federal treasury, but it's going to make it possible for her to get an education and then make her own special contribution to this country and to its future.
What are they going to do for the homeless people that's sitting out on the street and the homeless children and things? Because it always hurt me so bad to go downtown and see those people sitting on the street and nobody doing anything for them, you know.
You know, this is a national disgrace. We didn't have a problem of homelessness in this country 10 years ago. Sure, we always had people who were down and out, maybe had an alcohol problem or a drug problem, but we didn't have 3 million of our fellow citizens sleeping in streets and in doorways across this country. What's happened here? Well, we cut back on our commitment to affordable housing by 90%. That's why we have so many people who are out there homeless and without a chance to live in a decent apartment at a rent that they can afford. You know, Kitty has worked very hard with me in our state as chairman of my advisory committee on the homeless. We're providing shelters. We're building housing. And we've had a tremendous response from the housing community, from ordinary citizens who want to work with us. That's something a new president can do. That's something I want to do. Because I want to end the shame of homelessness in America, and I believe we can do so in a way that can make us proud of our country, can provide housing opportunity to millions of people who need it and want it and deserve it. And I think we can create a future for this country in which we can bring opportunity and jobs to every corner of this country, to Reading, Pennsylvania, to Hammond, Louisiana, to places that have taken it on the chin over the past 7 or 8 years. And when I say this to you, I say it to you as a governor who inherited a state that was a financial and economic basket case, and today is one of the great economic success stories. Why? Because we went to work together, we built that partnership, we made a difference. We can do it all over this country. We can make every single American citizen a full shareholder in the American dream.
The time is soon, the place is America. This is the way life should be. Someday very soon, right here in America, a brighter future is what we're gonna see. We keep reaching up for better, and we never will say never, 'cause we know where we've come from. And the best of America is yet to come. The best of America.
One of the best decisions I've made in this campaign was to ask Lloyd Bentsen to be my running mate, and what a running mate he's been, and what a senior partner he's going to be in the White House.
The campaign's going good, and I believe the momentum is really with us, Mike. Frankly, the people of Texas have been outraged by the distortions the Republicans have made over their commercial TV, where they've totally distorted your record. And we're setting that one straight. And now you're seeing momentum move with you. The other thing is they're deeply concerned about Dan Quayle, and as this election day gets closer, they're disturbed the idea that if Bush was to win, that he'd be a heartbeat away from the presidency. The other thing that they're relating to is your concern about middle-income America, that you're really addressing their problem, where the Republicans have turned their backs on them, want to settle for the status quo, with you wanting to move this country forward, doing things about college education and health care, really addressing that, protecting Social Security. Those are big issues that the Republicans just really have not addressed. But I think that with your kind of drive and momentum and hands-on management and fiscal responsibility, the public is relating to that, and that we're going to see this thing on November the 8th. I'm going to be addressing you as Mr. President on the night.
Another great Democratic president who's behind in the polls and surprised them all. As a matter of fact, wasn't it the Chicago Tribune that published that early edition that said Dewey beats Truman? Remember? And I don't know how many of you, most of you are too young to remember those days, but there was a radio commentator at the time, this was in the pre-television days, named H.V. Kaltenborn, who had a very distinctive way of speaking. And they asked President Truman the day after the election, when he had won, what he had done the night before. And he said he had turned on the radio where Mr. Kaltenborn was saying, well, the early returns appear to indicate that Mr. Truman is leading, but when it's all over, we are all confident that Mr. Dewey will be the next president of the United States. And then Harry Truman, in that wonderful kind of dry Missouri twang of his, said, and I had a sandwich and a glass of milk and I went to bed. Which he did. Woke up the next day and he was reelected as president of the United States, and nobody had given him any prospect of winning. In any event, I don't know that the American people are particularly happy about this campaign. There have been a lot of smears, and fears, and issues raised which don't have much to do with the presidency of the United States. People have been watching furlough ads, playing of politics with human tragedy. Here in Illinois, as you know, literature's been circulated that I called political garbage, and really that's what it is. And this is not a campaign about furloughs and flag factories. This is a campaign about the future of America.
This thing with George Bush. Now, he's dragging you down to the mud. You don't want to deal in the mud. Good. You're going to walk the high road, which you most certainly are capable of. Walk it.
Why weren't you playing hardball when he was playing hardball? It seems to me that you were mainly playing softball instead of playing hardball.
I haven't seen it really as a campaign. I've just seen it as two men trying to outdo the other one and see if they can make the other one look bad so they'll get the vote.
You need to be real clear and real strong in your comments. We need you now. And we need you before the election to say who you are and what you can do for the country.
I'm not in politics to cut up the other guy. I'm in politics, I'm in public service because I want to do good things and I want to help make life better for people. And maybe I did wait too long to respond to Bush's attacks and the distortions and the outright falsehoods that we had. We're fighting back now. We've been fighting back hard, and I think it's one of the reasons why we're getting the kind of response that we're getting and have been this past week or two. But there's a real problem here, isn't there? On the one hand, you got to respond to the guy's attacks. On the other hand, you want to put forward a good, solid, positive vision of the future for this country. Maybe my effort to do that got drowned out in a lot of the noise that we were getting from Mr. Bush, but I hope that you feel now that we have fought back, if maybe a little late, and at the same time, you have a sense that Mike Dukakis is on your side, is there when it comes to educational opportunity for our children and real and good and quality jobs for people all over this country and a future for every part of this country that you and I can be proud of.
Mr. Dukakis, I've been for you 100%. I voted for Reagan the last time and could kick myself all the way across the United States.
If you should get into the White House, I would like to ask you to keep your promise of taking care of the underprivileged, the homeless, and the hungry.
I'm going to vote for Dukakis. I'm a Greek American, so I know how he was raised, and I know how I was raised, and I think a lot of the family values I have, he probably shared, because my father's an immigrant also. And I think with that sound family background, if he's leading a country the way he leads his family, we can't go wrong.
There's nothing more precious in this life to me than my family, and Kitty and I are blessed with 4 jewels. It's been a wonderful experience for all of us. We thank you all so much, and I hope that I can win your support on Election Day. I'm going to do my best to be a fine president and a good leader and somebody you can be proud of.
The best America.
Paid for and authorized by the Dukakis-Benson Committee, Incorporated.